The heart of a Vaishnava I want to do a little something that I learned at our GBC meetings. Part of our process regularly is to begin our meetings with a reading, and the chair of the meeting takes great pains to quiet everybody down, settle everybody, so they can give full attention to the reading. So I'd kind of like to try that here today. Of course, everyone's pretty much settled down and quiet already anyway, but if you get in that frame of mind, that sort of a meditative mood to try to absorb ourselves in a reading. Madhumati is going to do a reading about the life of Sanatana Goswami. And it's important for our time here, this course that we're doing, in that we're studying the characteristics, the character of Vaishnavas sort of individually or isolated. But this reading that Madhumati is going to do is going to show us the complete package, the whole picture of Sanatana Goswami, the ideal Vaishnava, and his interactions with others, to sort of inspire us to take up that character ourselves, to become true Vaishnavas like Srila Sanatana Goswami. We also have something to ask of each and every one of you at the end of the reading, so be attentive and watch for that as well. I'll read. Is the light?
Hello? Yeah. Okay. We know from Jiva Goswami, he was taking care of Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur. They were not his disciples, but their spiritual masters had asked Jiva Goswami to take care and teach them the philosophy. So I'm just giving a little background for this reading. And also showing the affection. This whole reading is actually about the affectionate nature of Sanatana Goswami. So prior to that, I'm just telling the affectionate dealings with amongst the Vaishnavas and who is talking about Sanatana Goswami. So anyway, Jiva Goswami wanted to see Narottam and Srinivasacharya, the first book distributors, actually, to somebody to take them around Braj. So while he was contemplating, Raghava Pandit, he came to see Jiva Goswami, and Jiva Goswami welcomed him with affectionate words and everything. And then Raghava Pandit told Jiva Goswami that he's planning to go around Braj to see all the different places. And Jiva Goswami was very excited, and he asked, "Oh, could you please take these two devotees?" And he said, "Sure." So this is the background where Raghava Pandit is actually taking Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur to different places in Braj. And as he's taking, he brings them to one place, and he starts talking about Sanatana Goswami. So that in itself is such a loving exchange. Two devotees, a few devotees here, three devotees talking amongst each other and talking about another devotee, and glorifying that devotee while that devotee is not present there. So I think that's a very, that in itself is very, giving us a nice example. So this is how it starts. This is again, Raghava Pandit saying this. After staying in one town, when Sanatan would go to another town, the people would follow behind him. whether a young boy or old man, whoever it was, all would lose their patience and cry as the Goswami would leave. Sanatana Goswami himself would shed tears as he solaced them and sent them back to their own homes. Only after they all stopped crying and returned to their houses would Sanatan leave for the next village. As Sanatan approached the next village, the people would watch him coming from a distance. Whether young or old, or women, men or women, everyone would say, "Here's Rupa, Sanatan." The Vrajvasis displayed wonderful affection. So we sing affection from the Vrajvasis and from Sanatana Goswami. The villagers could not sit in one place but went to welcome Sanatan. Just as a poor man experiences unlimited happiness if he suddenly obtains a valuable jewel, so the Vrajvasis felt unlimited happiness by seeing Sanatan. The old, the very old men and women all treated Sanatan as their own son. Someone said, "My dear son, how did you pass on so many days forgetting us? Thinking about you, we were almost dead." Speaking these words, they all looked on the face of Sanatana Goswami. Seeing the wonderful arrangements for his welcome, Sanatan was very greatly pleased. The men, women, youth who were born in that village all had brotherly affection for Sanatan. Someone said, "My dear brother, how are you? You must have forgotten us completely. Why have you become so cruel?" That's an Indian way of expressing affection. In this way, they spoke with tears in their eyes. All the boys and girls came to touch the feet of Sanatan. Although he tried, he was unable to restrain them. Standing at a distant place out of shyness, the married ladies would take darshan of Sanatan. "Oh Srinivas, just by seeing Sanatan Goswami, everyone forgot even to offer obeisances. Whoever came rushing to welcome him would embrace him, take his hand, and lead him along. The villagers would jubilantly have him sit under a sacred tree, and everyone would sit around him. They would all bring yogurt, butter, and milk from their homes for Sanatan. After he finished eating, they would all sit happily with him. Sanatan affectionately inquired from each person about their well-being. He inquired about how many children, daughters and sons they had, whether they were married, where they were married, what were their names, and what was their education. He asked how many cows and bulls one had, how their agriculture was, how much grains they produced, and what was their daily routine. He also asked them how their health was and what was their state of mind. Hearing these inquiries, everyone felt happy. Gradually, each one of them answered his questions. When Sanatan heard someone's distress, he also felt distressed. By Sanatan's solace, they felt relief. By Sanatan's solace, they felt relief from their distressed condition. It kind of reminded me, when I was reading this, we left Alachua on Monday and from our home to come here, and we got here Thursday afternoon. And as we entered Gora Haven, we were greeted by ladies with beautiful round faces of Kadiravan and Kalyani Radha and Dana Kali. They all had their head wraps on, and they were like Kiwi gopis. And then Guruvani and Shamaguri were there helping us out with our room. So they brought us to our room, and we had barely put our luggage down that Maharaj came. And Maharaj came there with his big smile, and along with his smile comes what? Laughter, that's right, Maharaj's world famous laughter. Yeah, when we heard that laughter, that it was all our distress from traveling gone, disappeared. That's affectionate feeling. I mean, if you really think about Maharaj, he's a sannyasi, and we are householders fallen in the deep dark well, and yet Maharaj comes to greet us affectionately. That is an affection, and that's a devotee who expresses affection. It's not about rules and regulations. So anyway, this is what I thought. I was reading that. I'll continue. Early in the morning, as soon as Sanatana Goswami had finished his bath and other duties, everyone would come to see him. They would bring yogurt, milk, and request Sanatana to accept it. After feeding others, Sanatana would also eat. By seeing others happy, Sanatana would also become happy. As described previously, when he would leave the village, everyone would cry in agitation. Who can describe the affectionate dealings of Sanatana Goswami? He would solace everyone in various ways. The people would follow Sanatana Goswami for some distance until he would give his own vow to make them return to their homes. Sanatana would wander from town to town until he arrived at Baitan Gram. Seeing Sanatana, all the villagers felt so much joy it cannot be described. Sanatana Goswami inquired about everyone's welfare and thus joyfully passed day and night. Everyone knew that Sanatana would stay in a place for only one night, so they spoke to him in distress. If you remain for a few days here, it would be auspicious for everyone. Therefore, please accept our plea and don't be cruel to us. Please give up your habit of leaving in the early morning and thus save our lives. Speaking in this way, all the villagers cried. In order to please everyone, Sanatana Goswami agreed to stay. Maharaj,
I thought you were talking about Sanatana Goswami. Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the last sentence.
Yeah.
It described that in order to please everyone, Sanatana Goswami agreed to stay. So, Maharaj, next time you come to Florida, we're hoping that we'll not just visit Gainesville, but you will actually come to Alachua and following in the footsteps of Sanatana Goswami.
I knew I was going to get my arm twisted about something.
Well, I know you would want to fall in the footsteps of Sanatana Goswami. So when we asked you to stay for a couple of days,
I came to your house last time, didn't I? Shesha, stand up for me.
So I didn't know this was going to happen.
Didn't want to come?
Yes, she came to the house. She wants you to stay, I think, in the house.
I will meditate on your request.
thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
That was a good Indian response.
Thus the people of Baitan and the surrounding villages were always absorbed in his wonderful qualities. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a tradition that exists even to this day in Vrindavan, and that is that on the Guru Purnima day, which usually falls in July, August, in that time frame, so full moon in Vrindavan, and on that day, that is the disappearance day of Sanatana Goswami. And to this day, all the men of Braja shave their heads. It's a Hindu tradition. When the father dies, one shaves the head. And so Sanatana Goswami's memory is still so dear to all the residents of Vrindavan based on the types of loving exchanges that were described in the reading, that the men shave their heads in honor of the disappearance of Sanatana Goswami. And then everyone circumambulates Govardhan Hill. It's quite a wonderful festival. Of course, it's a very hot time in India. I've never been there at that time, but I read many descriptions of it. So dear he was to the Vaishnavas. Now, what we thought we could do to further absorb ourselves in that mood of how Sanatana Goswami exchanged loving relationships with the residents of Braj, as all of you are residents here, Nugupta Braj, that we would ask each and every one of you to, during your time here, engage in, specifically meditate and engage in, one of the 6 loving exchanges amongst devotees of the Lord. Share among yourselves that experience and try to deepen and actualize the instructions, which sometimes can be a little academic when we're sitting in a forum like this. So can everyone do that? Will everyone vow that they can try to engage in at least one of the 6 loving exchanges? First of all, we all remember what the 6 loving exchanges are. What are they? Somebody want to say what they are?
Give prashad.
Huh?
Give prashad.
Give prashad, one. Receive prashad, two. Offer gifts.
Revealing one's mind in confidence.
Receive gifts. Reveal one's mind in confidence. Hearing each other. Yeah. Easy to do, not very difficult, and probably you do them in your ordinary course every day, but take a little time to do it, especially while we're here for the retreat, so that we might come to the level of simple people of Braj having such intimate dealings with such a great Acharya, Sanatana Goswami. We shouldn't mistake those wonderful dealings he has, simple dealings with the residents of Vrindavan, that somehow indicate that he's not a great Acharya. Actually, he's the guru of Srila Rupa Goswami and the leader of the 6 Goswamis in Vrindavan. So we hope we're not asking too much, but you can do that. You would feel very much in your debt. Okay, so we now move to another quality. And if you can go up one here, go back one. Yes, here.
While he's doing that, can I ask the men to move up, please? Get as close to Shesha as you can.
So up here we have a couple of definitions. We talked about priti last time. We're going to focus on daya or compassion today. And so we have a definition to orientate us in our discussion. Our ability to be compassionate and tolerant are nourished by our ability to share affection. Such affection infuses our service attitude with kindness It helps us forgive, to be more caring, inclusive, and peaceful. The affection we receive from our relationships with the Lord should be apparent in our exchanges with others, as the quality of a rose is appreciated by its scent. Compassion. We're going to take a little bit of a different look at compassion than you might expect. And you can let me know if you feel that the approach we take in discussing this subject matter is appropriate. Why don't you go scroll down a couple, next one right here. Start with a couple of questions and answers about compassion. David Ritamar showed us that video last night, and who could not be moved by such cruelty that was depicted in that film? But is the emotion, are the feelings that we experienced actually compassion? That's one of the questions you see up there. Was it compassion or was it sentiment? What's the difference between compassion and sentiment? Yes, anyone would feel something when they saw that and heard about that story. What did the gentleman from Fontera, what did he repeatedly say during his interview? Yes, it's disappointed, it's very sad, he expressed feelings throughout. But did he express the character quality of compassion? No. They're different things. Now, when David Ritamar asked how many had seen that, and of course now we've all seen it, you said that many people you met on doing book distribution or coming to the lounges, they also saw that. How many of them do you think felt sentiment or compassion? The difference is in our answers up here. And I have personal experience in this as well, because my sister, she's a good person, even tried to be vegetarian at some point in time. And at that particular point in time was just after she read a book called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Anybody familiar with that book? The Jungle by Upton Sinclair? Yale man, obviously. But it's a book about the slaughterhouse industry around 1900 in Chicago. And it's very graphic in ways that books can be, about the horrors of slaughterhouses, etc. And when my sister read that book, she said, "I'll never eat meat again." She'll never eat meat again. But today she does. I'm sorry to report to you. So she felt sentiment based on reading that book, just like many people may have felt the sentiment when they see such cruelty, as we saw in the video. But compassion as a character trait is something different. And it's different because it endures. It doesn't go away after some time. So many images, Marge was also saying, so many images we see, video images on our phones, on televisions, waiting in the airport, waiting anywhere, in the bank, at the gas pump in America. I don't know if they have it here. Did you go to put petrol in your car in America? And they have like a whole TV network that you can watch while you're driving.
Where's the screen?
right on the pump. It's built into the pump. Our minds are just, sponges after this business. And things come, genuine feelings of disgust, of anger, outrage, all the emotions we may have experienced from watching that film, they come, but they go as quickly. We did our wave exercise, you remember? Remember the wave exercise? Rob is here again, maybe we'll have him stand up again. We do a wave. He was the lighthouse. He was that point that didn't change. The steady point that endured throughout all the change. Same point is here. Compassion is different than sentiment in that it endures. The feelings of outrage, of crying for persons to be merciful to those poor animals, those things stay in our heart. And they are acted upon. To stay, the emotion, the feelings have to be acted upon. If they're not acted upon, they, just like a wave, they wash over us, and the next minute we're on to something else. Srila Prabhupada didn't want that of us as devotees. He challenged. Maharaj read the quote. How can you be happy? How can you be happy after seeing that? Well, I can be happy if I bury my head in the sand and don't think about it and wait for the wave to pass and then go on. I can be happy in that way. But is that the way that we want to react? When Prabhupada challenges, how can you be happy? He's looking for a response from us. He's looking for a response from us. That, no, I won't let this pass. I'll do something about it. And all the more that we as devotees should do something about it as compared to those in the film who are not letting it go. They're not letting it go. Maharaj said they're taking it more seriously than us, apparently. So this is what we mean when we're talking about character traits. It endures. It's not going to pass, and we will do something about it. That's the point. We'll do something. We'll try to make a change. Now, I mentioned that the talk would be a little different when we talk about compassion, because I'm not going to necessarily be talking about feelings and emotions which are a little more subtle. But I'm talking about actions. So the question is, can compassion be quantified, or is it measurable? What do you think? I mean, is compassion something that's so much in the realm of the heart that when we attempt to quantify it or to measure it, it's somehow another something different? Yes?
I think the quality of compassion is manifest in action,
Yes.
and those actions are measurable.
Okay. Yes, the actions are measurable. The emotion, the feelings, the quality of compassion becomes externally manifest in the form of activity which can be measured. Are we all in agreement on that, or is there someone that feels that no, they're two different realms, hard calculation versus more of the sentiment? Yes.
If we do agree that compassion has a point of measure, then we can say it can be quantified. But if it's something that's free-flowing and transcendental and continuous, then it can't be measured because it has no end.
It has no end. Well, I agree with you in a sense that the depth of compassion that is felt by a truly spiritually advanced person is going to be beyond our measurement. I agree with you in that. But I do think that we can and should endeavor to measure or gauge our responsiveness to cruelty or other things in this world. I do think we do. And it's not just an opinion. I mean, I've thought about it, obviously, and I've studied the Shastra, and I've seen examples about where this quantifying approach is taken when it comes to compassion. I've written up here on the last line up there, Prahlad, Nityananda Prabhu, and Haridas Thakur. Prahlad Maharaj is a shining example from the Srimad Bhagavatam of one who from the very beginning of his life showed compassion to others by trying to give them Krishna consciousness. But not only try to give them Krishna consciousness, but to encourage those he gave Krishna consciousness to give Krishna consciousness to others, to pass it on. So it's that wave you're talking about. Yeah, it's going on. Prahlad Maharaj, he also used quantifying terms in explaining Krishna consciousness to others. Now, I may need some help here because I just have in my mind a reference to the quantifying analysis Prahlad Maharaj did to describe the miseries of material existence. Maybe he also used the same terms to describe the results of giving people Krishna consciousness. But you'll recall in his instructions, he explained how we waste time in this material world. He said, life is 100 years, but we spend 50 years sleeping, so half of the time is gone. Then, when we're young, we spend 10, 15 years playing like an innocent child, and therefore not really thinking about what's going on in the world. And then at the end of life, there's another 15 years when we are bewildered, our mental capabilities are diminished, and we can't really effectively approach the world or think about changing it. So in this way, we only have like 20 minutes or something, to be Krishna conscious. But he did this kind of quantitative analysis, and it tells me that results can and should be measurable. If we can use that analysis to explain to people how they're wasting their time, how they should immediately take to Krishna consciousness for their own benefit, then I'm sure the same thought pattern goes there in determining how successful we've been in convincing those to take to Krishna consciousness. So Prahlad Maharaj is a good example, and I'm going to read in a few minutes a verse that explains some of the compassion that he had for everyone. But let me give you another example of quantifying compassion. And that is in the preaching activities, the sharing Krishna conscious activities of Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur. Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur were Sankirtan partners. They would go out together. And they would go door to door asking people to chant Hare Krishna. Sometimes they would see people on the street and they would approach them and ask them to chant Hare Krishna. And this is what they did day after day. This was their service. Service to who? Who was their service to? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Their service was to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So what did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu do or expect at the end of every day? Yes.
Give Sankirtan reports.
Yes, he won the Sankirtan report. He was sending out Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur, and so he wanted to report what happened. How many people took to chanting the holy name? How is the outreach work going? He wanted to hear every day some report like that. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself considered it measurable, quantifiable. Indeed, when he heard that Nityananda Prabhu and Haridas Thakur had been accosted by Jagai and Madai, he himself came out and he wanted to make those brothers, Jagai and Madai, accountable for the damage, for the injury they caused to Nityananda Prabhu. So, compassion can and should be measurable. We're giving these examples from Shastra, but we all have a very dear, close example of this ourselves. And that is His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. He also was very interested to see and measure the results of the outreach work going on by the society around the world. He would read the Sankirtan newsletter. He would inquire from the leaders. Indeed, he would challenge the leaders. My dear Tamal Krishna Maharaj, such and such Maharaj's party has done like this. Why haven't you done like this? He would challenge them, and he would set goals. People think spiritual life, setting goals, nothing could be more corporate. What does it have to do with spiritual life? But Prabhupada would set goals. His famous goal was what? Double it. He was never satisfied. Double it. Devotees would virtually kill themselves trying to fulfill the order of Srila Prabhupada. I remember our godbrother Sarvabhauma. Remember Sarvabhauma? One day he decided that I want to set the record for distributing the most big books in one day. And so he set about doing that, working on late into the night, maybe into the morning, going every place. After this place closed, he went to that place, and finally he reached the number. He reached the number. Now, Sarvabhauma, I saw him recently. He hasn't done so good devotionally over the last few years, but can we fault him? He took that desire to make quantifiable Srila Prabhupada's compassion, carry Srila Prabhupada's compassion and give it to the conditioned souls. He's a great devotee. And it's measurable. His compassion was measurable. So Prabhupada did this, and he always encouraged his disciples to do that. So, yes, we can't afford to be sentimental. We have to be truly compassionate, have the feelings for the welfare of others endure. I have it up there. You have to focus on the soul. Remember we talked about that the other day. These qualities of character are characteristics of the soul. And the soul is paradukha dukhi. We heard this in the life of Sanatana Goswami. And she was reading, she described, he was feeling, as the others felt distressed, he felt their distress. And the amazing thing is that their distress might have been, my cows aren't giving milk, my daughter's not married. This is the kind of relationship he had with the Brijvasis. He even felt that kind of distress. He didn't just say, you're in Maya. So paradukaduk, that's the nature of the soul. And the soul's compassion can be quantified. This is the verse that I wanted to read to you that Prahlad Maharaj said. This is from the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th chapter, text number 24. He's talking to his school friends. Therefore, my dear young friends born of demons, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demoniac nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotional service, thus becoming their well-wishers. This is the mood of a devotee. Compassion for others, becoming the well-wisher of others. And we have the opportunity to do that in many ways. You want to go to the next slide for me? So what's in your heart? How full is your heart? Because with a full heart only, we can give Krishna consciousness to others. So how do we share Krishna consciousness? Well, we talk about our interests, things which are relevant to us. If we interact with others and we explain to them how Krishna consciousness is relevant to us and how it may be relevant to them, then it makes the exchange a lot easier, doesn't it? It makes the transmission of knowledge, it makes the acceptance of the holy name of Krishna, the acceptance of knowledge easier. So that's one thing that can assist us in increasing our numbers in the compassion that we express to others. Relevance to our lives, relevance to what's around us, what's happening in the world around us as well. I always admire Devarita Swami for this because his preaching is so relevant. It doesn't get bogged down in outdated or irrelevant subject matter. I was telling him an incident that happened to me recently. We were on Harinam on the beach in Jacksonville, Florida, near where our temple is. A blissful Harinam going on, and a young man came up to me and he said, "What's this all about?" I mean, he's at the beach. I think he had a beer in his hand or something like that. "What's this all about?" he asks. So without thinking, I respond, "Well, we're worshiping God," or something like that. I don't think I could have said a worse thing. Because it wasn't relevant to him. Okay, well, fine, that's your thing. Go ahead. But is not the chanting of Harinam party relevant to every living entity? Of course it is. So, if I could roll back time and go at it again, I'd take that lesson and be more responsible. Be more responsible that I give that spirit soul a chance to take to Krishna consciousness by being relevant. That's all. It's just one way in which we can increase our ability in sharing Krishna consciousness. Our realizations. Sharing our realizations and what we used to say, preaching according to your realization is very important. It also helps increase our effectiveness in sharing Krishna consciousness with others. It doesn't have to be that you your realization means that you have to go and talk to somebody about Krishna and the gopis or something like that. I'm very realized, I'm giving you this high knowledge. No, if you just go and give them what you actually understand about Krishna, what you realize about Krishna by practicing Krishna consciousness and studying the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. The example of this is in Saraswati. In the early days of ISKCON, Prabhupada took devotees to India. And some of those devotees were Malati, Devidasi, Shyamasundar, her husband, and their little 2 or 3 year old little girl, Saraswati. What does Saraswati know about the Siddhanta of Krishna consciousness? Well, apparently she knows quite a lot, because Prabhupada liked her preaching. He said, and he gave an example in his own addressing persons. He said, this little girl, Saraswati, she goes up to people and asks them, do you know who Krishna is? He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada was very pleased with that little girl for preaching like that, sharing Krishna consciousness like that. So to the degree that we realized, if we share that with others, then we're transferring from ourselves to them compassion that they can act upon themselves. We don't want to just talk to people, but we want them to hear us and act upon what we say. And that comes from sharing our realizations. We also have experiences in Krishna consciousness. Genuine experiences that keep us going in our daily, yearly practices of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness, as you know, is not always so easy. That's one reason why I ask you to share the 6 loving exchanges among yourself, to be compassionate among yourself, because we need that compassion to go on, to be encouraged in the daily practice of Krishna consciousness. Now, Maharaj, I think this is why she was asking you to come and stay with us, so that she could cook for you and we could offer some hospitality and serve you on
I
that.
had lunch at your place last time.
Okay, well, you didn't stay overnight. But these experiences, they're very important to us, and we can make them very important to others, and thus again increase our ability to be effective, measurably effective in our Krishna consciousness. There's an instance that always kind of touched my heart that I remember, and because it involved Satru Maharaj, who I served as a brahmachari servant for many years. He tells a story about the beginning in 26th Avenue when Srila Prabhupada was there. Srila Prabhupada came to the point of initiating the first group of devotees, and all the devotees living in around the storefront at 26th Avenue were excited to become initiated by Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was excited too. So the day came and all the devotees came and the initiation was done. But Steve, Satru Maharaj, didn't show up. Steve didn't show up. So the next day, in Prabhupada's apartment, there was a knock on the door, and Prabhupada opened the door, and there was Steve. And he said to Prabhupada, I've come to bring you the manuscript, because he was doing the service of typing Prabhupada's books, among others, the manuscript. I'm not sure where Prabhupada was dictating tapes at that time, and they were manuscript, and he was typing them, but he was doing some type of typing for him, helping him with his books. So Prabhupada looked at him and said, you didn't come yesterday for the initiation. And he kind of just hung his head. And then Prabhupada said to him, this process is not mechanical. In other words, you're just typing and you're giving me the good thing, but it's not just mechanical. If you love me, then I'll love you. Could you imagine Prabhupada saying that to you? Well, I'm sure that's what's propelled him through his whole life in Krishna consciousness. Because it was an experience of the compassion of a Vaishnava. So to the degree that we've also experienced that ourselves, we should share that with others. It can make a tremendous difference. And I know I'm just, as we say, preaching to the choir. Because I know all of you are absorbed very enthusiastically in spreading Krishna consciousness here in New Zealand. So I don't need to tell you anything about how to share Krishna consciousness with others. But for my own edification, as I said, I'm the one that told that guy this is about God and turned him off. So I'm hoping that, if I can satisfy you with some words, then you'll bless me that I can also become more effective, measurable, quantifiable exponent of Krishna consciousness to others. So our experiences are important. Now, those objectives in spreading Krishna consciousness can be seen or determined or analyzed in 3 different levels. We may not be little Saraswati, we may not be Prabhupada saying to Satyarup Maharaj, we may not be on those kind of levels of Krishna consciousness, but when we attempt to share Krishna consciousness, there are at least 3 different levels that we can work on the basis of. One is knowledge. Prabhupada gives the example of the man sitting on the tree branch and he's sawing the branch from the tree side, not the branch side. And so anyone with knowledge that sees that person, if they have even a little compassion in their heart, represented by knowledge, they'll, wait a minute, if you keep sawing that branch, you're going to fall off of there. So by knowledge, just on the basis of knowledge, you may want to try to express your compassion to someone. And you all do. Distributing Prabhupada's books to those that may be heading into a bar or some kind of a meat place or something like that. Just on the basis of knowledge. And that's not good for you. Take this book, you're exhibiting compassion to them simply on the basis of knowledge. Of course, it's transcendental knowledge, and it's nothing simple compared to the gain that people get from these little endeavors. But just with knowledge, we can express our compassion. We also may not be very inspired ourselves on our own, on the basis of our own realization or experience, to work so hard to give others Krishna consciousness. But rather we may be sort of swept up in a group enthusiasm in the mission. We have one godbrother named Jivanath, he lives in Alachua, Florida, and he was explaining to me how he joined. He joined in Philadelphia, where I served for many years, and he first met the devotees when they were at a stoplight. They used to distribute books at a stoplight. The cars come up and the light turns red, and all of a sudden all these devotees run out and start knocking, please take this book. So that's how he met the devotees. And he wasn't a religious person, he wasn't, searching for the meaning of life, nothing, he was just a guy. But he thought, he saw many of them doing this. He thought, there's a group of these people doing this. They must have some, mission or common goal or something like that. I can get into that. So he joined. Just because, hey, we're all doing this, right? He joined the movement, and he was out there at the stoplights doing it himself. just based on the mission. People are inspired by missions, no matter what they are. And they may, by Krishna's grace, just like with Jivanath, they may get attracted to the right mission and change their own lives as they work jointly to give others an opportunity to change their lives. So just by knowledge or just by mission, of course, by love is probably the best motivation we can have. And that's actually Prahlad Maharaj's motivation. A little later in the same 7th canto, I want to read to you his statement. He says, "O best of the great personalities, I am not at all afraid of material existence. For whatever I say, for wherever I stay, I am fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. My only concern is for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness, maintaining their families, societies, and countries. I am simply concerned with love for them." Prahlad Maharaj is an example of someone who has a pure motivation of compassion and love being the motive for which he's prepared to undergo so many hardships and dedicate his life to that paradukha-dukhi, the relieving the miseries of others. So obviously, we want to come to that level of motivation ourselves. And when we do, we'll have real potency to change the world. But it's a process. It's a process, and there's no reason why not to, even from the most basic ideas of having knowledge or realization or experience and sharing that with others, there's no reason at that stage to not engage in trying to help others, to benefit others. That's the nature of the soul. Actually, we're talking about a lot of different character traits here over these days, but the number one quality of a Vaishnava is compassion for others. And so this is a very, very important aspect of the character of a Vaishnava, the heart of a Vaishnava. We don't let it go, it endures. And we work hard in measurable, quantifiable ways to achieve the goals that are given to us by those great devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, like Srila Prabhupada. They gave so much, and so we give back a little bit, whatever we can in that way. I just want to cover one last section here, and that is what opportunities we have to experience heartfelt exchanges in sharing Krishna consciousness with others. There are 3 contact points that we can examine. There are 3 contacts. Okay, 3 contact points that we can examine. Because we're all looking for heartfelt exchanges, right? I mean, is anybody not looking for heartfelt exchanges? I think we're all looking for heartfelt exchanges. Of course, most of the time, we don't look for them in trying to give Krishna consciousness to others. We think, due to the illusory energy, that I'll get heartfelt exchanges in other ways. But if you actually want heartfelt exchanges, think about these 3 contact points in which you can exchange heartfelt relationships with other people. But we have to know, as number one says there, what are your motivations in making contact with someone? What are your motivations? You know, when we talk, that's one of the things we're trying to explore in this course, knowing our own motivations and the motivations of others. So what are your motivations in contacting others? Can anyone want to volunteer what their motivation is? Yeah.
Suggest motivation, but I don't know my motivation.
Okay, well, suggest motivations.
Well, name, fame, adoration, distinction.
Name, fame, adoration, and distinction. Yeah. That may be our obviously that's not recommended, but it may be a motivation we have, isn't it? And we're thinking, oh yeah, my name's going to creep up on top of the Sankirtan report. I'll be famous worldwide. People know my name. That's one type of motivation we can have when approaching someone. It's probably not going to be the best in terms of developing a heartfelt relation. And we'll see that when we examine the other two contact points. But what other type of motivations? Anybody? Duty. Yeah, that kind of goes along with that mission thing. Mission, duty. So we may have that as a motivating factor when we're contacting others. Any others people have? Yes,
Gratefulness.
Gratefulness for what we've received. Yeah. Over here, anybody over here? Yeah.
The way I've got benefited by following this process, I would like to give you the same process so that you can also be benefited. So.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of grateful, but reciprocal. I've got something I want to give them. Yeah, that's good.
Compassion.
Compassion.
And to please the Guru.
And to please the Guru, yeah. Sometimes our heart doesn't have compassion, but the Guru's heart has compassion. And if we simply follow his order, then we're expressing compassion and we get the feeling. Yeah, good. Yes. Purification, right. We undertake austerities for purifying ourselves, and that's a good motive out there, especially compared to seeking name and fame. I say, yeah.
Imitation in the sense of appreciation for the sacrifices of others. So you may not know how to do what they're doing, but you appreciate that they've sacrificed. And so imitating what they've done. Making it till you make it, I guess.
Right, well, appreciation of the sacrifice of others and being inspired. It's kind of like inspiration, right? We've seen, oh, others are inspired. Let me approach with that inspiration to others. Yeah.
Perhaps just the taste of giving Krishna consciousness to others?
The taste of giving Krishna consciousness to others. And based on your experience, you're actually relishing the happiness and desiring that happiness for others as well. Okay. Yeah. Experiment. Let me try it out. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Many people try it out in the Harinam parties, and they end up being part of the Harinam party. So, yeah. Let me give you a couple of now on the negative side here. Okay. We had the name and fame one. What about pride? What about pride? I have a lot of knowledge. I'm going to tell you something. You're a fool and rascal. I've got knowledge, I can give you knowledge. That's not a good one, by the way, but it's not good. Money. Many people actually think that the devotee's motivation is money. Maybe because Atmavan Manyate Jigat, we see the world according to our own desires. And people think, oh, they're making so much money, they don't see the transmission of transcendental knowledge going on. So money, or self-interest, money or any kind of self-interest. Or some kind of need coming from a lack of emotional balance. Obviously these things, what you've contributed, are good motivations. And they're fulfilling emotionally. Sometimes it's hard to go out and Sankirtan, to distribute books, to deal with the rejection that we often receive. It's hard, it's hard. The only thing that can balance that is our right motivation. Because if we have the right motivation, and again, these are heartfelt exchanges, an opportunity for heartfelt exchanges. If we have that, then it helps us get over types of inhibitions we may have. So that's the first point of contact that's important in these exchanges. The second one is the response that we get from the person we're approaching based on our own motivations. I think we have to be aware subtly when we're dealing with people. If we have certain motivations which aren't the best, let's say, maybe we're going to get reactions from those we approach that aren't the best. For instance, if my motive is money, then, unless I'm very slick, which I'm not, then the person is going to perceive that motive and won't be willing to take a book, to take transcendental knowledge. A lot is riding on the representatives. And actually Prabhupada told us like that. We understood back in the 70s like that we're representing Srila Prabhupada. So if we're representing Srila Prabhupada in these steps or these exchanges, then we need to be very careful to do our very best and not let selfish motivations come in that result in people thinking that we're belittling them. Oh, I've got so much knowledge, what do you know? People feel belittled, oh, I don't want to be, I'm not interested. People feel exploited, no, they're just interested in my money. They don't have anything real of value to give me. We should be able to gauge what's the response. If we're not sensitive enough and self-reflective enough to understand our own motivations, then we should try to read the responses of others and see how they're responding to what maybe our motivations. But sometimes we get responses that are even beyond what we put in. We may be rightly motivated, maybe a little bit ill-motivated, but a lot rightly motivated. We may be completely rightly motivated, we may be ill-motivated, but still sometimes, because this is a transcendental process, we end up getting results which are way beyond what we ever expected, getting responses from the others. And I'll tell you a little story about myself in this regard. In the 70s, I was brahmachari traveling on the BBT library party. And our service was to visit college campuses, university libraries, and get them to take sets of Srila Prabhupada's books. And so we are way up in the mountains of Colorado, small little town. I think it was called, I don't know what it was called.
Gunnison?
No, it wasn't Gunnison. It was, I think of Durango was the name that's in my mind. Anyway, we were there, a small little college, and I went in to see the librarian. And I was talking to him, and we had a professional approach. We had catalogs, and we were showing him the books, trying him to get an order like a businessman. And at one point, the man sort of leaned forward across his desk to me, and he put out his hand like a little fist like that, and he said, "Do you know what that is?" And I was so bewildered and shocked at what was going on, I said, "No, I don't know." But what it was is that he had a ring that was an Om ring. You see this ring? It was an Om shape, symbol was there. And, obviously I knew what the Om symbol looked like. He's got it on his shirt there. But I was so bewildered by what was going on, I couldn't understand. When he said that, oh yeah, I recognize it. Then he leaned back and he started to tell me the story of his life. Now this is way up in the mountains of Colorado, away from anything and everything. He's a college librarian. It wasn't like there was some ashram up in the mountains up there. So. And so he started telling me how during World War II, he was a soldier that was in the Asian theater and that he had come in contact with Srimad Bhagavatam. And not only had he come in contact with it, but he said to me, this is what he told me, he said, Srimad Bhagavatam is my favorite book. I was, what? I couldn't believe what was going on. He took our order form and everything out of my hand as I sat there in bewilderment, filled it out himself, all of Prabhupada's books, ordered for the library, everything there. Everything but say Hare Krishna, he did. That wasn't in reciprocation with my motivation. I was barely in the, mission stage, because everyone else was doing it, I'll do it. But there it was, Krishna put me in contact with someone where I could have this exchange. And obviously, he felt good about it because probably there's not too many people he could say to that Srimad Bhagavatam is my favorite book. But I guess he figured I must have known something about it because I was selling it. So sometimes our motivation, we get responses far beyond our motivations. And that leads to the third point, which our reaction to the reaction of those that we contact. Well, in my case, I was completely, I think I just went to the van afterwards and just sat there all day and wondering what just happened. Because once they took all the books, there was nothing left for us to do on campus. But the other devotees that I was with, my partner, they weren't finished with all their rounds yet, and so I just was sitting there wondering what to do. But our response is also very important, because if we approach with right motivation, we get reciprocation, then we also feel emotions. We may feel fulfilled, we may feel inspired to go again, do it again, the next person. If we do it with wrong motivations and we get responses which are unfortunate, and Prabhupada did say that if they go away dissatisfied, whose fault is it? Yeah, it's your nonsense. If they go away dissatisfied, that's your nonsense. Clean up your own motives and your motivations for doing something. And then they won't go away. I think we heard a story that just recently, since I've been here, that someone didn't take Krishna consciousness initially, but then later they came back and took it. I can't remember the details, sorry. But we may go through feeling neglected, gratified, inspired, fulfilled, encouraged, or frustrated based on our exchanges when we're trying to share Krishna consciousness with others. So best we have the highest motives, but if not, at least duty, if not ordinary common courtesy, trying to give Krishna consciousness to others, and relish the experience. That's the point. If we have right motives, then we'll have heartfelt exchanges and we'll be completely satisfied, and to go on with that throughout the course of our life. So these are all elements of compassion, maybe a little different take on it than just pure sentiment, but I think we need to move beyond just sentiment that doesn't endure so that we can continue this important work, utilizing this most important quality or characteristic of a Vaishnava, which is compassion. So there are comments or question marks? Do you have any? Anyone else? Mr. Vidal?
Was something you spoke about in the beginning. You were mentioning about the reactions to the Tao expose newscast. And you were saying how the difference between sentiment and compassion is that there's an initial feeling, oh, this is bad. But then does one actually act on that feeling? Is it sustained? Is it truly deep? So you were commenting about the various persons interviewed, like the representative from Fonterra, the dairy monopoly. I'm disappointed. But obviously he had no intention to change his industry. I'm disappointed. And he was asked, well, what do you say about this widespread abuse? I'd be disappointed if that's how the industry is being depicted, based on a few samples. But nevertheless, we should take action on those few cases. I was just talking to Krishna Prasad, who, as a kid, grew up in a rural area, worked on a lot of farms, and now as an electrical contractor, goes to a lot of farms. He says, what you saw is all standard. He sees it all the time, has to see it as electrical contractor. And so much for the defense that, oh, this is just a few isolated cases. Why are they making a huge international expose about it?
Yeah, it's very distressing. And it should invoke from us a response that is sustained and appropriate. I think the last time I was visiting here, there was also outrage shown by young people at the destruction of the environment. That motivation turned a little excessive, which is also a warning. Therefore, our response does need to be sustained but appropriate. We don't want to have to spend years in jail like the main person in that video.
Solitary confinement.
So,
They treated him as a terrorist.
wow, solitary confinement being treated as a terrorist.
Just to make an example, like no one else would ever think of doing this. This is what we're going to do to you.
Use your intelligence, Prabhupada would say. So other comments or questions?
I have two questions. In the interest of time, would you rather I ask anyone?
Why don't you ask one and then we'll see.
The one question I have is, when we're talking about affection and feelings and then about compassion, and we also hear in Nectar of Instruction and Nectar of Devotion that associating with non-devotees is so bad that a devotee should rather be embraced by a snake or by a python or enter into fire rather than associate with non-devotees. For me, this was my first year of working, and I actually had much more association with non-devotees rather than with devotees. And in my nature of work, I have to socialize, I have to relate to others. I've been forced to go to bars and drink lemonade. You have to find some way to relate to them, but at the same time, how to preserve my own heart so that my real relationship is with devotees. And this is just something that I learned to do as something which doesn't really affect my heart. Because if it affects my heart, then their desires, their inclinations are going to affect me. And the instruction is very strong that you should rather embrace a python rather than associate with non-devotees.
Srila Prabhupada tells a story in this regard about a monkey and a crocodile. You know the story? The monkey and the crocodile. The crocodile was very much interested in eating the heart of the monkey. So he made friends with the monkey, and the monkey would, he developed a relationship. I'm not going to tell it all because I don't remember it all, but I'll tell the essence. A friendship developed between the monkey and the crocodile. And so the crocodile one day said, "Come on, jump on my back. I'll take you to the other side of the river." And so the monkey sort of foolishly did that. Sort of foolishly. When they got in the middle of the river, the crocodile said, now I'm going to eat your heart. And the monkey said, "Oh, my heart? Really? Oh, I left it back up in the branch. Let's go back and get it." So the crocodile foolishly took him back. And he jumped up in the tree. And, the moral of the story is you can associate with people, but don't give them your heart. So we can associate, we may be forced to associate in so many ways with different people, but we don't give them our heart. The heart is for the Vaishnavas. So we can protect ourselves in that way. Of course, there are many other practical things that you can do that may be subject matter of another discussion rather than cover one here. But the point is that we have to know our heart and our own motivations, know ourselves, and not let that be given to materialists or those who would take us away from the process of executing Krishna consciousness.
What does it mean to give your heart, and what does it mean to associate but not give your heart? What's the difference?
Well, confidentially sharing one's feelings, one's aspirations in life in terms of being a devotee of Krishna. Those things which really are the motivations for whatever we do, and you're a devotee, so you're not working, I assume, not just for the material benefits that come from a job, but because of necessities of family, etc., so many things. So those aren't your motivations for working, as they may be for others who think, oh, now I have a career and a job, and they just completely absorb them. They throw their heart and all into it, and then they're downsized after 15 years and thrown out in the street. So those things which are the things that motivate us, that give us inspiration, they're Krishna consciousness, and those things we need to guard very carefully from being polluted by others. I think that we can discuss more later, but is that okay? No?
Is there time to ask that second question?
I have an interesting point.
Yeah, Maharaj.
Gopal Guru asked me this question in terms of his doing business when he was a salesperson, because now he's a quantity surveyor, but before that he was a salesperson selling housing developments to wealthy people. So in doing that, the custom is you go for lunch, you go to dinner, and and that means drinks. So he's having his salad and drinking his lemonade, but if he's like the one who's presenting the deal, he's expected to provide the drinks for the others. So he was a bit worried about that. We're at these places that serve alcohol, and I have to kind of wine and dine these clients while I'm munching on my salad and drinking my lemonade. So what do you think, Guru Maharaj? What do you think? I said, well, what's the purpose of the gathering? He said, the purpose is to do business and to make a profit off of them. So I said, fine, get him good and drunk. get them to drink more and more, so they'll make, you can, make a good deal for yourself.
Very good. Somebody had a hand over here someplace. Anything?
I'm just wondering about, you say that compassion is quantifiable in the sense of our actions. Is there an automatic correlation between the external and internal then? Because it might seem that those who either different reasons don't go out and do direct service, might be the argument that they have no compassion.
Yeah, well, I think that our hearts have to be a little bit bigger than that. We're all part of one effort. And Prabhupada's example was the Indian Railway. The motto of the Indian Railway was to keep the wheels turning. Now, the wheels turning is an external manifestation of a lot of activity. The whole of the railway system. And it all has an impact on keeping the wheels turning. And so we should feel like that as well. I mean, everyone's come here together at this wonderful festival, and at the end of the festival, we will go our separate ways in some sense. You go back to the Brahmachari house, the ladies will go someplace else, but that doesn't mean that the unity that we feel and work with here, that I assume in a couple of nights there's going to be the quantifying presentation. Tomorrow night the same. So there'll be that, and it'll be quantifiable. But that's for all of us to relish and enjoy and benefit from. That's how we should really see it. No matter what service we're doing, we should try to see like that and try to assist. In the community where we're from, in Alachua, Florida, we don't have a Brahmachari Sankirtan party. It's mainly grahastas in the community and working people. And so the temple president there takes the opportunity to inspire us to contribute in ways that, someone may, from their paycheck, give a certain amount of money and buy books and give them. They store them. They distribute them throughout the year at different venues. And so everyone has the opportunity to feel part of the community effort. And so I think that that's a very, very important part of it should be part of our motivation, that, we're here working together to accomplish something. And then that thing called synergy will happen. Synergy is when the results become greater than the input. Because by working together, by having that kind of attitude, you get bigger results than just the parts being put in. So I would say that quantifying things shouldn't have ill effects if we have that kind of attitude. Yes, please.
My question is, if I have zero compassion for someone, does that mean the compassion that I have for others, or is the compassion that I have for others real? Because it's completely conditioned.
Say again, if you have zero compassion
for some people, I come at a Sunday feast and I see someone like a new guest, and I feel like this urge to share with them and show compassion to them. But then others, zero compassion at all. Is that compassion that I thought I felt real?
Well, it probably needs to be developed, and that's why we gave this little assignment that while we're here, we try to exchange one of the 6 symptoms of loving exchange amongst devotees. Because, our friend, compassion is bottomless. So we want it can always develop more and more and more. I'm sure you're humbly saying you have no compassion for someone, but taking your point, maybe it's a little less than you have for another person or a new person, but we should try to develop. We should be compassionate for every living being. There's a story we didn't tell about Sanatana Goswami, where it's a long story where Jiva Goswami upset Rupa Goswami because he was trying to defend the honor of Rupa Goswami against the traveling Digvijay. And so Jiva Goswami, although he was junior to this Digvijay, he thrashed him philosophically and said, don't ever, try to embarrass Rupa Goswami again. And when Rupa Goswami heard about it, he banished, Jiva Goswami from Vrindavan. With this kind of attitude, you don't deserve to be in Vrindavan, so go out of Vrindavan. So he went out of Vrindavan, and then later Sanatana Goswami came to know that Jiva Goswami was living in a crocodile hole, and he asked him what happened, and Jiva Goswami told him. So Sanatana Goswami went back to Rupa and said, you must have forgotten one principle of our philosophy. What principle did I forget? He said, Jiva Doya, mercy to the living entities, mercy to Jiva. Jiva Doya, mercy to the living entities. So Jiva Doya, he said, mercy to Jiva Goswami. And so Rupa Goswami understood and he brought him back. So compassion can always increase. It should always increase. We should always desire to increase it and exchange it with our God brothers and God sisters. So it's a work in process. We have to keep working at it, though.
We should.
Okay. Yes, we'll end there. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.